Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Walk. I'm your host, Joshua Ingram. It is Monday, July 7th, year of our Lord 2025. And this is episode number 130. The last several weeks I've been trying to think of topics to discuss during the podcast. I guess, my spiritual walk isn't that great right now, so I'm just kind of, I wouldn't say there's been points where I've been just really spiritually depressed and downcast and kind of in the dark. I wouldn't say I'm at a point like that. I'm just kind of, laissez-faire, I guess, kind of complacent, just floating along. And just a lot of my thoughts are just, focused on day-to-day stuff rather than spiritual stuff. And so I just haven't had a lot to talk about. And the one main thing that's happened in my life over the last few weeks is that I decided to stop attending the church that I was going to. And I wasn't sure whether or not I should discuss it because it can be very easy to step into complaining or bad mouthing, and I don't want to do that. So I was like, I don't really know how to discuss the reasons behind me leaving in a loving and proper way. So I've hesitated on talking about it, and I don't know. I think it'll be beneficial just to talk it through here on the podcast. And like I say, I'm gonna strive to not say anything negative because I really don't have anything negative to say. I'm not bashing on anybody or accusing anybody of anything. That's certainly not the intent behind me leaving. And I did struggle with leaving because I'm not an official member there, but I've been going there for, about a year now. And I did grow to really care about a few of the people, even though I didn't really have much fellowship with them outside of church service. But there's a few, especially during the Bible study or the Sunday school sessions, that I just, you recognize the Spirit of Christ in them. And so you grow to love them, and it makes it really hard to depart without, because the thought is, man, if I leave, they're going to feel abandoned. You can't help but feel like that, and it has nothing to do with them. I'm not leaving because of any of the members or anything, or even the pastor. I'm not leaving. Anyways, without rambling, I guess I'll get to the point here. So I started attending this church a long time, or about a year ago, like I said. I guess that's a long time, relatively, to some people. That wouldn't be a long time, but... and I've shared with how that happened. I was doing some ministry out with the signs and tracts, and I ran into a guy who told me about his pastor, and just piqued my interest. And so I started going, and the Lord really ministered to me the first couple of weeks I was going there. And so I interpreted that as the Lord kind of telling me that I'm supposed to be there for the time being, and I didn't know how long, but I just knew that I was in a really bad spot spiritually. Like I said, just kind of in a darkness, a spiritual depression, and I felt refreshed going to this church. I felt like the Lord was just kind of comforting me and giving me some needed medicine in a time of spiritual hurt. And so I thought, okay, I'll stick this out, even though I knew almost right away that there's some doctrines, some key doctrines for me that I would disagree with the church on, and I would disagree with the pastor on. But I thought, I'm just going to set that aside, which, if you know me personally, that's very atypical because I'm very hard-headed and stubborn. And there's a few things that I'm very zealous about in the scriptures, and when it comes to like doctrine or theology. And in the past, I wouldn't tolerate false teaching or what I perceive to be false teaching. I would just leave, and that's why I haven't really been able to find a church that I'm completely comfortable in, because usually at some point in time I hear something that I'm in total disagreement with, and I just can't bring myself to sit under the teaching and direction and authority of somebody that I disagree with on very important and fundamental topics. But in this case, because I was really just kind of sure that this is where the Lord wanted me to be, I set that aside and just said, you know what, I'll just bear with it. I'm here for a reason. I feel like the Lord has me here for a purpose. So I will just set aside my differences for now and see what the Lord has for me. Even though, some of my brothers were in disagreement. Some of my brothers were like, you can't be attending a church where they teach heresy. Even though it's not direct heresy, but it's a topic that a lot of people would consider heretical. And I'm talking about the doctrines of grace. When you come from a reformed position, free will, decisionalism type doctrine is heretical. And I think we have church history on our side, because when you look at like the councils of Dort or the Council of Orange, Pelagianism or semi-Pelagianism, or free willism, decisionalism would be considered heretical. I tend to think there's a lot of genuine Christians who are not blatantly heretical. I just feel like there's a lack of understanding when it comes to the issue of free will. And so over the years, I've kind of grown a little bit more patient with that. But anyways, I thought I'd stick it out. I'll just ignore that and stick it out. If I don't hear anything directly heretical, if I don't hear anything directly contradictory or opposed to the gospel, I'll stick it out, And so I did that for a while, and the pastor there, he was just an interim pastor. The church had gone through like a split or something like that before I started going there, and they were in search of a permanent pastor, and in the meantime, this interim pastor was going to be there. And so recently here, a couple weeks ago, they brought in a guy who's going to now be their permanent pastor. But when I was going, they were kind of, I don't know how that whole process works politically in a church, but they were doing like a test week or something, or a couple, having preached some sermons, and then the church members would vote on whether or not he's going to be their permanent pastor. Since then, they did vote that he would be. And I sensed that was going that way, and that's kind of when I decided to leave. And the reason being is because the doctrines of grace were specifically brought up during a Q&A session with the pastor, and he was not a Calvinist. We'll just put it that way. And there was some other things that were kind of irksome to me and bothersome to me, but that was the main one. And I got really just kind of disappointed and hurt, because my prayers before that were, Lord, just, please bring in a pastor who is just doctrinally sound, theologically sound, who has this figured out. And I don't know, when I heard that, I was just really disappointed, and I kind of sat there and I thought about it, and I was like, all right, Lord, is my time here done? Did I do what, have I accomplished what you wanted me to? Was I here for the period of time that you wanted me to be here? Is it time to go? And I just started thinking, I can't see myself being a permanent member or being permanently placed under the authority of somebody who has that fundamental principle of the gospel. Because I believe that, like Spurgeon said, Calvinism is the gospel. And that takes a lot of explanation. I know a lot of people are probably offended when they hear that. But when you properly understand the doctrines of grace, it's the heart of the gospel. You can't, if somebody denies or rejects or doesn't believe in the doctrines of grace, I feel like there's some very important key things that they're just going to have wrong, that they're going to be off on. And I discussed that in the last podcast, that mainly you're not going to be able to understand sin, the depravity of sin, the totality of sin, and how infected and depraved human beings are, and how lost we truly are if you don't believe in the doctrines of grace. You're not going to have a proper understanding of sin. And in addition to that, you're not going to understand salvation then. Like if your views of salvation are going to be tainted, they're going to be weakened. You're not going to see salvation as the miracle that it is. The spiritual working of God and how he resurrects and causes to be born again. Like, your understanding of that is going to be flawed if you reject the doctrines of grace. And so I just thought, when somebody has that wrong, I can't see being under that authority. I can't see them being fit to lead. Your teaching is going to be off. You're going to have, at best, lukewarm, soft, fluffy theology, and without a proper understanding of doctrine, without a proper understanding of the truth and the totality of scriptures, your faith is going to be weakened. And what I mean by that is not your personal salvific faith. I'm not questioning that. Like I say, there's certainly a lot of people saved that believe in decisionalism. At least that's my opinion. I've encountered people that I believe are really sincere and true believers. But your understanding of how salvation works, and your understanding of evangelism, and your understanding of the gospel, your understanding of the work of God in your life is going to be wrong, and you're going to be weakened because of that. Strong doctrine creates strong Christians. When your foundation is right, when you're eating meat on a daily basis, when you're full of the robust and vigorous truths of the scriptures, it's going to be evident in your life. And I've witnessed that. The strongest, most vibrant Christians I know, and that doesn't have anything to do with holiness or victory over sin. I'm talking about just mentally assured in the faith and living out true Christianity. The strongest, most zealous examples of that come from those that are rooted in strong doctrine, that are rooted in the truths of the scriptures. And as a matter of fact, I made a Facebook post the other day listing throughout history these great, tremendous men of God and how they were all Calvinists. And we're talking like Martin Luther, John Knox, John Edwards, George Whitefield, John Newton, Charles Spurgeon, R.C. Sproul, John MacArthur, John Piper, Brian Borgman. The list goes on and on and on and on. The greatest names, the most effective vessels in the history of the church have been those that are rooted and built up in true doctrine. We worship Christ in spirit and in truth. The more truth you have, the more spiritual life you're going to have. And so I just thought, I really don't want to, nor can I see myself sitting under the teaching of somebody that just has that wrong. You're going to create a weak church. You're going to lead weak Christians, sickly Christians. And again, that has nothing to do with holiness and victory over sin, because honestly, some of the holiest and those that are living the purest lives are also those that are free will proponents. There's kind of a dichotomy there where you look at it and you go, wow, how can this be? But I think that's because those type of people tend to have a lot of strong willpower. And so I think a lot of their virtuous lifestyle comes through comes through self-will, and not actual fruit of the Spirit. It's through strong willpower and determination and effort. You can set aside a lot of these outward sins. You can clean the outside of the cup. But my understanding of it has always been, even if I do that, and the inward remains corrupted, the thought life, the heart life, that takes miracle to fix that. And understanding that not only salvation but sanctification comes through the work of the Holy Spirit, not through self-effort. Like I always thought, there could be a tendency where I could clean the outside of the cup, and then I just kind of become a legalistic religionist, ignoring the inside, or pretending like the inside is fixed as well, because I'm living this outwardly pure life, but inwardly I'm full of rottenness. Whereas proper thinking and theology, and I'm obviously missing something. There needs to be a combination of both, because we do want to live that outwardly pure life, but I want it to be genuine work of the Spirit. I don't want it to be because of my efforts and willpower. I want my heart fixed. If I don't know, I'll give an example. This isn't something this isn't a sin that I struggle with, but if like I lie to people on a regular basis or something, like through effort and willpower, sure, I could stop doing that. But there's a taint in the heart. There's something in the heart that's wrong that causes me to lie. And so if I just put a muzzle on myself, I haven't fixed the heart issue. And I might become blind by thinking, oh, I've got this under control. I'm living a good and pure life. And there's just you can sense that fragrance on some people. There becomes this legalistic, self-willed holiness that people walk around in. But those that are I don't even know how to say it. There's the ones that I am drawn to the most are the ones that are transparent and self-examining and recognizing that no matter what I do outwardly, I have a heart problem, and that heart problem needs to be fixed. And again, that comes through proper understanding of doctrine. So I believe that a true biblical doctrine, it roots you. That is remember when the seeds were talked about, and there are some seeds that spring up immediately and then wither because there's no root in them. That root is doctrinal truth, because Jesus Christ is the Word. So the more you learn the Word, the more you come to accept the truths of the doctrine. You're accepting the truths of the character of Christ, and you're growing in Him, and you're growing. Your roots are going deep, and deeper and deeper. The more you come to doctrinal purity, and you become immovable, unshakable, and you're more focused on internal purity than external acts. And so I just believe that when you reject those fundamental principles, the doctrines of grace, which they're crucial. It is the gospel. Understanding that man is totally depraved and wrecked by sin, that he is dead because of sin. He is spiritually dead, unable to do any good, unable to come to God, unable to worship God, because God is spirit and we are spiritually dead. That sin has ruined humanity. That's the T in tulip theology, the doctrines of grace. Totally depraved. Unconditional election, believing that in spite of all my impurities, in spite of my wickedness, God saves us. It has nothing to do with us. It has nothing to do with our good actions or our religious deeds. And believing that I can say a prayer or make a decision, that is a good thing I have done. that then corrupts that belief. It takes away from the glory of God. It's not because of me. It's in fact, I can't do anything. That's that unconditional election. And the limited atonement is that the cross in actuality paid for my sins. It didn't just provide an opportunity for me to have my sins paid for. It paid for my sins. And the cross paid for the sins of all of God's children, all those that will be in the kingdom of heaven. The atonement is effectual. It's real. That's that L. And the I, the irresistible grace, how when God decides to move upon your heart, he does such a miraculous work that he converts your will. He changes your mind. That's repentance. He gives you a new heart. He creates a new life in you, a rebirth, spiritual life that is irresistibly drawn to him because it's your new nature. That new nature wants God and desires God. That's that irresistible grace. He creates that in you. And then P is the perseverance in the saints, that once you are in the kingdom, once he has truly caused you to be born again, there's no undoing that. Once he has circumcised your heart, you cannot uncircumcise it. You are going to, for the rest of your days, seek after God and seek after Christ. And it's all the work of God. And that is the gospel. That's the gospel truth. That's why I say with Spurgeon, Calvinism is the gospel. And so when you reject Calvinism, and I don't think people are doing it maliciously or even intentionally deceitful. I think it's just a lack of understanding. I think we've grown up in a society, in a church that is so focused on human autonomy and believing that your will is what's important, and you like it corrupts the whole thought process. It corrupts the totality of your understanding of scriptures and of the gospel. So when they decided to appoint this permanent pastor in this role, and I saw that that's what he believed, I decided, it's time for me to move on. I was just disappointed. And unfortunately, I live in an area, I've searched. I really cannot find too many Reformed churches. I mean, I'm sure there's Reformed Presbyterians, but that opens a whole other door of error that I'm not willing to go down. There's a lot of baby baptism and amillennialism, which I think is just foolishness, and I don't want to put myself under that as well. There is a Reformed Baptist church here, and I was going there for a little while. It just felt so impersonal, though, too. Yeah, I'm such a critic. It's like I want to find somewhere with correct doctrine that's also warm and inviting, and it seems like it's just so hard to find. So, anyways, I feel like I accomplished what God wanted me to accomplish there, and now I'm just back into waiting on the movement of the Spirit to lead me into something new. Hopefully. I don't know what the Lord's will is. I'm kind of at peace with this whole thing right now, and I'll just wait to see where the Lord would have me go. It's not about church necessarily, although, like I say, if I'm going to go to a church, I want it to be proper, but it's about the fellowship. I want to find, I have so few true believers in my life. It would be nice to just have close personal relationships with other solid born-again believers. And that's what I'm seeking out when I go to a church. But anyways, I just thought I'd provide that update on where I'm at currently. I wanted to take some time here to explain a bit of my political position, especially as it relates to the Israeli-Iran conflict right now. Mainly because I've been posting a lot on Facebook vehemently and aggressively opposing American intervention in this war. Like I'm just really opposed to the idea. I don't want to see American lives lost. I don't want us involved in another endless Middle Eastern war that is based on fear-mongering and lies and is really just setting up the New World Order. And I'll explain what I mean by that. But in doing so, I've been aggressively rebuking President Trump. And I think a lot of Christians and patriots are just taking it the wrong way. Like, I don't know. There just seems to be... I've lost quite a few friends on Facebook here recently over the last few days. And I guess that's neither neither here nor there. But I tend to think that a lot of people have their identity wrapped up in individual politicians rather than ideas. And so I wanted to clarify, like, my political beliefs, my worldview is not invested in individuals. I'm not a Trump guy. I'm not a J.D. Vance guy. I'm not a Rand Paul guy or an Elon Musk guy. I know he's not a politician, but he was involved in it. That's just not where I view that. My views, and this is 20 plus years of study in this topic, I believe that the entire system is corrupted. It's not just people. It's impossible for people to comprehend this because they don't have the right worldview. They see things through the view of Fox News or, CNBC or whatever. They see things as left-right. They see things as conservative liberal. They see things as America, good guy patriotism, Russia, bad guy communism, that kind of ideology. And that's not the way the world works. It's just not. If you are a fan of professional wrestling, or if you understand how professional wrestling works, that's really a picture of how politics works. It's an illusion. There's an illusion of differences, but it's the same organization behind the scenes. The WWF or WWE doesn't care if you're a fan of Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Rock or Hulk Hogan or John Cena. Even when they're fighting together, the WWE, the system doesn't care who you cheer for. The WWE just wants you invested in the product. And behind the scenes, there's really no difference between the guys. A lot of times they're friends backstage. It's a show. And that's how politics is in America. It's a show. The left-right paradigm is an illusion. There's a controlling system behind it. Like, there's stage performances of rhetoric, of arguments over issues, but behind the scenes, the system advances no matter what. And so my political beliefs are, I support ideologies. I am for truth. I'm for justice. I'm for freedom, accountability, law, morality. Those are the things I'm for. And so when a person, I don't care who they are, when a person stands up and speaks truth, so I can get behind a Donald Trump rhetoric speaking point on, hey, we need to secure our borders because sex traders and drug traders and potential terrorists are just flooding across the border. If we have an open border it's not just victims of oppressive systems that are coming over here. It is also enemies of America. It's people who want to harm American citizens. And so you have to have a secure border. You have to have a vetting system to make sure that whoever you're letting in is not going to break the law, is not going to kill people, is not going to endanger people. So when he speaks that rhetoric, I am for that rhetoric. Or when Elon Musk says he wants to get in and he wants to find where money is being wasted, he wants to hold people accountable for stealing taxpayer money, I get behind that. Or when a Democrat like Robert F. Kennedy speaks about getting rid of the fluoride in the water, or the poisons in the food, I am for that. It doesn't matter if it's right, left, but I'm not for Robert Kennedy. I'm not for Trump. I'm not for Elon. I'm for the ideologies they're expressing. The proof is in the pudding. Are you actually going to follow through on what you say you're going to do? And in my entire life, there's never been a politician, except for one, Ron Paul, Senator Ron Paul from Texas, who tried to do what he said he was going to do. He tried to his main focus was ending the Federal Reserve, auditing the Federal Reserve. Right? I shouldn't say his main focus. That's the one that I'm most aware of. He was anti-New World Order, and he followed through. He tried to do things, and he spoke, in public platforms about the evils of the New World Order system and the Federal Reserve. But even that, if he came out and said, "Oh, hey, I'm pro-abortion," I would stand against him. Not against him, against that ideology. It's the topics, and so when a person speaks like they're going to do something, when Trump said, "Hey, we're going to get out of these stupid Middle Eastern wars, that are just wasting money. We shouldn't be involved in them. We need to focus on America." It's like, yes, that is good rhetoric. Do I think he'll follow through? Well, history has shown me that nobody ever does follow through. They're all liars. They're all deceivers. Either that, or the office is actually just powerless. They get into power and they can't actually do the things they think they want to do, or they get corrupted when they get in there. Again, because the system is in control, not people. It's the American empire, the military-industrial complex that's in control. And so, based on the rhetoric and the hope that, I thought, well, Trump, he's not really a politician, he's a business guy. Maybe he'll be one like Ron Paul. Maybe he'll be an actual statesman and not a politician. Maybe he'll get in there and do the things that he said he was going to do. Or like, I listened to Dan Bongino's podcast, and he seemed like a stand-up guy, and I was like, I like the things he's saying. I like the things, that he was, especially when it came to the attempted Trump assassination, and how he wanted to hold the Secret Service accountable, and how, he just the things he said, it was like, okay, that sounds good, I'll get behind that. But then he gets into office, and now he's doing things that appear to be anti-freedom, anti-accountability, that appear to be furthering the New World Order system. And so I oppose him, and people go, well, I thought you liked Dan Bongino. It has nothing to do with like or not like. It has to do with is he furthering the ideology of freedom? Is he fighting the New World Order system? His rhetoric prior to going to office was good, so I support that rhetoric. But now that he's in and he's not doing anything, I oppose him. If you're not going to help, then I'm going to stand against you. Trump, he's been now, he was in office for 4 years before, and now we're going on a half year here, 4.5 years. There are, his rhetoric has failed. I see no difference. I don't see a wall. I don't see him holding the elites accountable like he said he was going to. And now the thing that's upset me here recently that I've been posting about is his dangerous and aggressive stance against Iran. It's like, I'm not for that. If you're going to play with fire, and people can say, oh, he's playing 3D chess and he's just trying to get him to negotiate and whatever. Okay, that's fine and dandy. But Iran, in the meantime, Iran could bomb us, could bomb our military bases, kill American citizens. It's not something that should be done. You shouldn't be playing with fire. Any sort of aggression with somebody like Russia or China, I would oppose that too. Like, war is not okay. You said you were anti-war. You said you wanted to fix the American economy and end the Middle Eastern wars. And now you're aggressively going after another Middle Eastern country. I'm not okay with that. And so I'm going to call you out, because I'm not a Trump guy. I'm a freedom guy. And I don't think a lot of people understand that, because a lot of people just support the individuals. They're, oh, I'm a Ted Cruz guy. Or, oh, I'm a Tulsi Gabbard guy. I'm a Donald Trump guy. I'm a Bernie Sanders guy. And so their political identity gets wrapped up in these individuals, and they support these individuals blindly regardless of what they're doing. And that's like cult-like behavior. It's a cult of personality, like that one song says. You don't really care about issues. You care about your hero, your superstar. You've attached your wagon to this person, and you'll follow them no matter what they do. That's like the Bush scenario. When Bush got in, so many people were like, oh yeah, Bush is a good Christian. And I even fell for it, I think, in 2004. I think I voted for him, thinking he was a Christian. And then, I found out he was a member of Skull and Bones, and he did a lot of evil things, and the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq was a complete lie, and ended up with like over 1 million dead Iraqis. He passed anti-freedom acts like the Terrorist Act and the Patriot Act, and he just, so regardless, at first I was wrapped up in the individual, before I understood things. It was like, oh, I'm a George Bush guy, I support him. But then as I started to understand, like, well, hold on now, and everybody should understand this, every single year, without fail, just think about this. Think about your life. Every single year, everybody you voted for, everyone, doesn't matter which side of the aisle they're on, said they were going to do things. And once they were in office, they did not do those things. Every single time. And yet people still just continue to support the support the individual, and not call him out. There's so many Trump people who are just going to blindly support Trump, even if he leads us into World War III. And it's like, I'm not okay with that. I'm not going to just sit by and be like, oh yeah, that's okay. Not to mention some of the things he's doing with like national ID cards, which is leading into the beast system, wanting protection for AI companies so they can't be sued. Part of his big, beautiful bill. Still not building the wall, still not releasing the JFK files, even though they said they would, still not releasing the Epstein files, even though they did a ridiculous publicity stunt where they pretended like they did, and they had social media influencers standing in front of the White House with big folders, supposedly the Epstein files, and it was all a lie. And that just gets swept under the rug. Pam Bondi saying, oh, we've got thousands of hours of video from the Epstein Island. Okay, well then go arrest the people, or people just over and over and over again. There's a lack of accountability. There's a tax on freedom. There's Trump is pro-homosexual, pro-abortion. Well, I wouldn't say pro-abortion, but he's certainly not anti-abortion. People talk about like, oh, he got Roe v. Wade overturned. Well, it just became a state issue. He didn't overturn nothing. There's still just as many abortions now as there's ever been. So again, it's like, I'm not wrapped up in the individual. Yes, I voted for him with the small sliver of hope that maybe he would be like a Ron Paul. Maybe he would be one to try to follow through on his rhetoric. Now, in my mind, I thought if he does, they're just going to kill him. But providentially, God could protect him, and let's see if he follows through. But if we end up going to war with Iran, like, that's it, man. That's the economy will be ruined. All other issues will take a back seat, and we'll just have this big Middle Eastern war, and American citizens will get killed, and there's a huge potential risk that Russia and China and Pakistan and India, they all get dragged into it, because they're all, Russia, China, Pakistan are all nuclear powered countries and have alliances with Iran. So it's like, it's insane. It's and the reality is, this fear mongering, Iran's gonna have nuclear weapons, that kind of propaganda should not be accepted by the American public anymore. It's since 1992 they've been saying that. Since my entire life they've been saying Iran's just a couple weeks away from having a nuclear weapon. It's fear propaganda to make Iran the boogeyman, so that when we attack them, everybody justifies it in their mind and say, oh yeah, they're the bad guys, we gotta get them. Or the reality is, whether or not Iran has nukes, and they probably do, I don't know, but whether or not they do is irrelevant. They're not going to bother America. There's no interest in coming and attacking America. That's foolish. The reality is Iran stands in the way of the New World Order. Iran wants to remain a sovereign nation. Good, evil, or indifferent, whatever, they're in the way of the New World Order. And so the New World Order system, the world government system, needs to destroy Iran. And that's the reality. It's not the fear-mongering that our propaganda media perpetrates. Like, people just should not buy into that. So, anyways, I just wanted to clarify that if your political affiliation is wrapped up in an individual, then you are the wrong one, not me. Our worldview should be, first of all, as Christians, we pray for kings and those in powers. Why? So that we can live peaceable and quiet lives. As a Christian, we want peace and quiet in our lives, which means we want the freedom to proclaim the gospel, because that's inevitably what we're going to do as born-again Christians. And so we want a government that's going to allow us to do that in peace. We don't want authoritarian, tyrannical, oppressive governments. And so that's the goal, freedom. And then, because we're Christians, we love truth, we love justice, we want to see evil. A government is supposed to prosecute evil. That's what Romans 12 is about, or Romans 13, I'm sorry. Is a government is supposed to hold evil accountable, and we want to see that. So that truth, justice, accountability, morality, freedom, that's our political ideology. And anybody who speaks for those things will support you, but if your actions don't follow through, well, then I'm going to cheerlead against you. I'm going to speak out against you. And that's the way it should be with Christians. All right, that's all I got for you guys today. As always, I truly appreciate you listening. I love you, and Lord willing, we'll talk to you next time.